Good evening, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for joining us this evening for the 9th presentation in the Presidential Lecture Series. It is truly an honor for the University of Guam to be able to collaborate with the Guam Humanities Council in tonight's presentation. And I'd like to remind you again that we will be, as usual, we have both Monieka and David Okada with cards for anyone who has questions and pencils to please write your questions down. And after the lecture, we will be able to present a few questions to tonight's presenter. I'd like to go ahead and recognize the presence of several dignitaries. First of all, our Senior Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Helen J.B. Whippy. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, our Dean of the School of Education. And the Honorable Catherine Merriman, Justice with the Supreme Court of Guam. Again, it is my pleasure to ask Dr. Kimberly Killing, the Executive Director of the Guam Humanities Council, to please come forward and give a few remarks. And I apologize. I also wanted to recognize one of the members of the Guam Humanities Council Board of Directors, our very own Dr. Don Rubenstein. Dr. Killing.
Apologies for the delay. It's always technical difficulties right before the start of our presentation. The Guam Humanities Council is very honored to partner with the University of Guam President's Office for this evening's presidential lecture. A special thank you to President Underwood, who I know cannot be here due to an important prior commitment. And I want to thank too Dr. Helen Whippy as well, and to Louise and Chris of the President's Office. You've both been very helpful in organizing the event. This evening's lecture is the final event in a week-long series of conversations, presentations, and readings with Dr. DeLisle as part of the Council's Project 8000, How Will It Change Our Lives? Community Conversations on the U.S. Military Buildup in Guam. As many of you know by now, with this project we have taken a very different approach to encourage island residents to examine the impact of the relocation of military personnel and their families to our island. One that utilizes humanities-based conversations on related themes of service, leadership, identity, community, and power that are grounded in literature, specifically Pacific Islands literature. So we use poems, chants, short stories, and other texts. The ultimate goal of these conversations in the larger project is to give our community voice, to civically engage around this transformative issue that affects all our lives, and to critically think about and talk about the values and choices we make while living together as a community. I just want to take a few moments to acknowledge and thank our financial sponsors who have made this project possible and Tina's visit possible. First of all, of course, is the National Endowment for the Humanities, which has provided grant funds for the project through the We the People initiative. The Bank of Guam is the project supporting sponsor, and even though she's not here, I want to give a special thank you to Lulian Guerrero, who is also the Council's Vice Chairwoman, for her continued support of our efforts. CARS Plus is also an important sponsor, and I want to thank Joey and Joyce Chrysostimo for their commitment to the project and our organization. Joyce became the Council's Chairwoman in July, and it's been a real pleasure to working with her. We have several generous sponsors specifically for the series of events with Tina, who represent women-owned or women-managed businesses. They include Mariasi Beauty Academy, Payless Supermarkets, AM Insurance, Global Food Services, Family Finance Corporation, DeLisle Beauty Supplies, and Lauria Industries. Thank you so much for all of your support. And a thank you as well to IP Coffee, the Fisherman's Co-op, and Lauria Industries, which will be providing the wine and food for the reception following the lecture. Thank you for joining us this evening.
very much, and it is with great pleasure that I introduce the person who's always willing and able to stand in the stead of our president when he's unable to be here, Dr. Helen Whippy.
Thank you. Oh, okay. That's cool. Flowers, food, wine, I like it. Just standing in the stead of the president, you're getting quite a build-up, Dr. DeLisle. Christine Taitano DeLisle is a thoughtful, reflective scholar, a Chamorro writer, author, and historian. In 2008, she received a PhD in the Joint Program in History and Women's Studies from the University of Michigan, where she is currently a postdoctoral research fellow with the program in American culture. Dr. DeLisle's dissertation, which she is currently revising into book form, is called Native Lives, Navy Wives, U.S. Race, Gender, Empire, and Chamorro Modernities in Guam, 1899 through 1941. And it examines the cultural and historical relations between American naval wives and Chamorro women in Guam during that period. She has a master's in Micronesian Studies from the University of Guam, so we are proud to welcome her back. And that was awarded in 2001, and an undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley in social science. She has published essays in Women Writing Oceania, a special issue of Pacific Studies, and Sovereign Acts, a forthcoming anthology from South End Press. She has written on Guam's cultural and political history for the Haleta series of textbooks published by the Guam Political Status Education Coordinating Commission, and her poetry has been featured in the University of Guam English Department's Storyboard Journal. Tina's public scholarship portfolio also includes the curation of several traveling exhibits on Guam and Micronesia, the Canoes of Micronesia, Peoples of Micronesia, Images of a Navy Wife in Guam, and the production of 2 video documentaries, Sacred Vessels, Navigating Tradition and Identity in Guam, with Vince Diaz, her collaborator, and the Patera of Guam, Their Story and Legacy with Karen Cruz, the midwives of Guam. In 2006, as part of the requirements for a certificate in museum studies from the University of Michigan, she was hired by Chicago's Field Museum to help reconceptualize its exhibit, a traditional 19th century Maori meeting house held in the museum since the early 1900s. Last night, she held a community conversation sponsored by the Guam Humanities Council at Carmen's Restaurant. Tonight, we present the 9th talk in our presidential lecture series. Thanks to the Guam Humanities Council, we welcome Dr. Tina Taitano DeLisle speaking on Rethinking the Terms of Engagement, Chamorro Identity and a Gendered History of the U.S. Military on Guam. Thank you, Dr. DeLisle.
Thank you, Dr. Whippy, for that very nice introduction. I wanted to just take this opportunity to extend the Donkalu Messages Marasi to the University of Guam, to Dr. Robert Underwood, Dr. Helen Whippy for the invitation to give the Presidential Lecture Series. I'm very honored. And to the Guam Humanities Council, to Dr. Kimberly Keeling for helping, for bringing me out here and for sharing my scholarly work as well as the creative work. So my first poem for tonight,
I can recite it for you.
in her unpublished writings about the war and Guam's liberation from the Japanese, Chamorro educator and leader Agata Johnston wrote about her experiences having been recruited by the military to organize